you will now be able to hear 4 very interesting presentations from across the Nordic region, different perspectives from different parts of the value chain. And we will start with Knut, who's here on stage with me.
Thank you.
Welcome straight in from Oslo. What we will get now is we'll have 2 presentations. The first will give us some insights on how can we make these LCAs more faster and more efficient, and maybe also help with the design phase. And then after that, there will be 2 other presentations focusing on what are we currently doing and what is happening to actually use these buildings that we already have in a better way. So we now use only the click share, so we cross our fingers that everything will work. And Knut, take it away.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, Helle. My name is Knut Ramstad. I'm from Nordic Office of Architecture in Oslo. And we're actually quite big in Denmark and Iceland as well. We have 60 architects in Reykjavik, which must be the highest density of architects anywhere in the world, I guess, compared to the population. So what we're going to talk about now is we have developed a tool that makes it easy for our architects to calculate and track the CO2 bound in materials for our projects without the need to carry out complex independent simulations that require specialized expertise and software. And this is important because by doing this, you can work as an architect without special knowledge, and you can do your calculations while you're actually designing the building without having to ask your expert colleagues. So we were looking for a solution that mainly should help raise awareness among the offices and the teams. Should be accessible to all our architects, should not require special knowledge or software, and should initiate competition among market sectors and projects. And obviously, why we're doing this is we're doing this to lower emissions compared or in our projects. So this is a short explanation of what the solution is about. It's 100% homemade from our architect in the teams. And this is built to be used throughout the design, different design phases as a part of the daily or weekly processes. We were looking in the market for solutions that were simple enough, but we didn't find it. So we decided to develop our own. And it required a little coding, but now we have a solution in Autodesk Revit with a one-button solution. It's really simple. All you need to dial in is the total area, and then you will get a report, which is really, really fast and really, really useful. So we launched this last year, and we see that it's a very, very popular tool to use for the different teams. So we were looking for a tool that could provide a solution that was good enough in early stage and so easy to use that you could use it maybe once or twice a year, utilize existing tools without the need for specialized licenses or knowledge, and it should be expandable and adaptable over time. We're ISO 14001 certified, so we needed something that was possible to use in that context. And we wanted the dashboard so that everyone can follow the development of the projects. And obviously, we would like our clients and our employees to get positive insight into what Nordic is actually doing. So the approach, I will not go too deeply into this, but we wanted to extract the greenhouse gas data into Autodesk Revit, which is our main design tool, and we want to retrieve relevant data from Revit using the simplest methods possible, which is one button, and then present the data in a relevant format. So what we did was actually, we're part of the Nordic group, and they have huge databases. And what we did was to couple these databases with Revit and make it very easy to map the different materials with the CO2 equivalents mapped to specific building elements so that we get this automated, which is obviously very, very important. And most of our objects in Revit, they have a quantity associated with it, whether it's in pieces, square meters, or cubic meters. And now we get this directly into Revit. And what we're doing in this is actually having this button here, and we create a report based on one click directly in Revit. And least we need to present this in a very, very easy way. And what we do is taking that database together with Revit and C# coding, Excel, and you see this button over here, which is all the architect has to relate to. And this is what's happening behind the scene, where we're using Microsoft Power Platform and SharePoint to get this data out to this graph, which shows the average. So this is what we're showing the clients and our employees on our webpage. So the status now is we've been training most of our staff. The teams are mapping materials, and we are still in a situation where not all projects are going through Nordic Carbon Tracker, but in the near future, we will get there. So to sum this up, this is mainly to raise awareness, make it possible to make informed decisions in early phase design, and work very, very thoroughly into reducing material-bound carbon. We all have this challenge. EPDs are standardized according to EN 15804, but the presentation of these data varies. So whenever you get a sheet from or a PDF from a supplier, this is not necessarily machine readable. So what we did was to make an AI to do that work. So what we basically do is in a project, you get EPDs from lots of different manufacturers, and we feed them into our Microsoft theme project channel. And the AI starts to work here, and it extracts all the relevant data, feed it into Excel, and you get this automated, which is a beauty compared to the old days where you had to dial it in. So that was Nordic Carbon Tracker with our AI module. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Knut. And now I would like, so yeah, we will take questions after you and Tuija. So not now. So I will now like to ask you, Tuija, to come to the stage and share some really interesting insights on a project and a lot of knowledge you built up at VTT. Welcome, and the stage is yours. Please use the clicker.
Maybe you hear me now. Thank you. I'm happy to, thanks for the invitation. I actually asked Helle that can I come and present this instead of she asking me. So it wasn't actually me, but one of the researchers that I'm speaking for. I'm working in a technical research center of Finland. My name is Tuija Pakkanen, and I work as a lead in sustainable built environment. And I want to remind you that I'm representing 2,500 of smarter people than I am. So I'm the dumbest person in that office. But I want to remind you that our research institution has been doing research on LCA for 15 years. We have been doing that for a long time, and we want to share some ideas behind it. So actually, I'm just going, oh, interesting. Okay, this is not working as it's supposed to. It's okay. So what if we wouldn't be asking what is the actual amount of LCA calculations? What is the life cycle global warming potential of the building? Because it is impossible still, unfortunately. It requires still a lot of manual expert work. And therefore, I like the proceedings that Maria and Harri was talking about the limits and what we are discussing on the national level, that we should be talking rather the limits of which under we should definitely go. I don't know what yet here's. But there is a question that can be answered already automatically in some of these answers already now, without large demand of the architects. I'm happy that there was a good presentation about the Finnish Building Act that was under consideration for several years. I'm an old colleague of Harri, for example, in the Ministry of the Environment, and hence I'm not really going towards the details of that. But it is going highly towards to the BIM-based automation of the LCA calculations in the legislation as well, even though it's not compulsory. We cannot make every single architect doing that calculations automatically because it's basically impossible. A lot of the architects are actually drawing by hand, and we have to enable the work by these people as well. So what are the requirements for BIM-based LCA is that we need the quantity takeoff from BIM. And this requires that the BIM guidelines, templates, export filters, examples are clear and they are comparable from project to project. We need to have matching products or materials from BIM to the LCA compared to the LCA databases. So products and materials have to have right classification. There's no limits for interpretation on this. And calculation, reporting, checking life cycle, GWP against the limits, then this means that the practicalities and the methodologies that there must be, but also the tools. I'm going to skip on this one. We know that we are going to go to the building legislation in Finland, and there will be a decree that was mentioned already before about the climate declaration coming up in the forest in the beginning of next year, and also the limits will be there. But I'm gonna ruin the game. I'm gonna tell that it's not gonna be so simple. Even though we have a good basis of these are examples of the databases that we have from the emissions, and we can make the actual calculations based on some of the official databases that is there in Finland. But while we are looking for the required information is the building floor area, building energy, and material identification, products identification, and relevant quantities. So I would like to, this is actually the ones I was afraid of, like, I'm going to flick these slides through. If I get stuck, I wish I get stuck in the right slides. And this is what is actually the spoiling part of it. I'm representing the research groups that are making a couple of these projects, which one of them is Accord. And these are the proof of concept tools to study automated conservative estimations of environmental impact of the IFC model. So researchers have done a remarkable work, basically, on finding a tool that it doesn't have an user interface. And we have a tool how to actually calculate it step by step from IFC, how much the LCA calculations are. You may find it for free to make it into use on this address, anything found in GitHub. But as I mentioned, it doesn't have a user interface. So you have to have a program or a developer or a product where to implement it to, but you're free willing to explore it into because it's carried out with money came from EU. But when doing this kind of work, we had several challenges in the looking at the quality of the model data, which is that in these examples, when doing this, we had missing material identification. We didn't have enough information, the detailed information about the model, what it is and how much it is, especially for the missing quantities. We need to have how much certain material is in the building. Also, the challenge has been material name is not matching the records that there are in the official databases that I just showed that is carried out by Finnish Environmental Institute. So if a label in the IFC model is different from the database, you have to manually match them to make the interoperable possible. But also there are some missing entities. So once you get the IFC model, well, BIM model in your hands, and you just realize that there are some random items that doesn't have actual place and what they are and what they should do. So feedback to the designer, to the architect, or the one who draws the IFC, the number of IFC entities included in the assessment has to be correct. But then also there has to be, while there are the number of entities without any quantity, they don't have how much there are certain items, they have to be done some other way, like calculated from the bounding box. Sometimes in the calculations, they could be ignored, or we are making some assumptions that they could be probably conservative material like concrete or steel or whatever. This graph over here shows you the quantities index and materials index. Talking about the next slide, I will show you 4 cases used in 4 different methods of calculating the LCA using IFC. And how much do these match in actual realistic life? So the red one is showing how much the quantities, like how much the stuff is already there and how much the materials are there in percentual wise. So in this one, we have 4 examples. We have used Tekla structures, ArchiCAD in 2, and Revit in 1. And here's the perfect example. In the first one, we get the calculations of LCA carbon footprint, which all of the quantities, how much stuff is there, and what materials are there can be identified. So it's kind of a good result in that sense. But we have things on the markets that can be also thought. We have different types of calculations of thinking of, even though we have the quantities, like how much stuff there is 100%, but what if the materials are wrong? In this case, we have only 36%, or here only 19. And how about here, 38? So we might have the materials index okay, but then once we have to, the quantities index, that how much stuff we have there, making some of the assumptions. But then again, if we don't label them right, we get the wrong figures. And therefore, the good example of the next slide, which is my second last slide, I think, is the comparison of the same building. This is a courtyard house of Pori, and it was calculated for assessment period for 50 years. And the point is to show the reliability of the calculation, that there is no one single truth. Therefore, I go back to the basic idea of the limit, that we can find out the result in some sort of level of accuracy, but not in total figure. So Helle was saying that it's so simple to calculate this amount. So I'm ruining the game, but it's not really. You can get two different figures with two different valid programs. Now the other one is actually, of course, ours, the ones that we created in the Awkward project. But good to see that how much big of a difference do we have at the same place by making some assumptions. So eventually, I'm just saying that if we are not able to do the limitations let's say the calculations on a certain way in one building, how can we do these limitations and this kind of work together in different countries in all the way? So it's not so easy, and therefore I asked the questions to the how have you compared? Because if we wanted to do any kind of collaboration between the Nordic countries, we would definitely need to also define how to make the interoperability working in different kinds of formats. And we have made just one solution, this Awkward tool, to make the calculations in one way, but to be understandable in that sense that there is no such a thing as one basic number of truth. Especially because we know that there is different kind of requirements in each of the countries. But while I know that I'm lack of time, I'm showing you some QR codes to find out more. And if you want some more information, you may also ask the project leader, Rita Lavikka in VTT on this. But thank you.
Thank you. Please stay. Please stay. Thank you very much. Please stay. Please stay.
No, stay.
Run away. Thank you very much, both of you, for very inspiring and interesting and concrete examples of how you're working with the design optimization, capacity building, how to use these data, and then how to make it uniform and readable and understandable, and all the EPD challenges. Is there any question in the room for these two stakeholders at the moment? No burning. Okay, Martin have one. Of course, why not? Yes, one question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Knut, please come on stage.
CPR, the new CPR, it promotes digitalization and also interoperability. And the approach suggested by this CPR is data template.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't work with that one in Finland, my knowledge. But in that approach, you have a product that belongs to a product family and CPR, and then you have a library where you put all the performance of the product is declared, and it's in a uniform way. So it's following the BIM standards. So I think you should add that as your missing part, and then it will be perfect.
I can respond to that. I actually like the idea. It's very good. But then how do you enter a new material or new product into the market who doesn't have that kind of digital footprint? And I really like the approach. I don't know what is the right answer, but also the opponent opinion from architects is that you also limit your creativity by giving such a library in use. It might be the case. I'm not an architect myself, but also it would be interesting to see how can you make it live in that sense so that it will also invite other
it's very live
products.
because you can't put the product on the market if it doesn't have the declaration of performance and conformity. So you have to have it.
Yes.
And the format that is used is this data template approach. So actually, the legislation is a forum. They are before science. They are supporting science.
But good question. Whose task is it? Because I think that it's not a task of a public authority to do such a library. Is it a private
they
one?
don't. They support the infrastructure because that is what they can provide. But it is always the producer that put the product on the market that is responsible. And that person, if that's a new novel product, they have to describe the new property of the product, and they have produced the declaration of conformity. And all the information you ask for will be there. Legislation.
You're talking about wet dream of well, lots of the people in this room.
Yeah.
Thank
Will
you.
happen.
This will happen. That was the final words. Thank you very much for a good comment or solution, and also for your feedback, because it also shows it's not just super easy. There's a lot of concerns, but it's true that the construction product regulation, CPR, and the digital product passport has some opportunities there, but of course it takes time also to make that interface, and we need to find solutions for that as well. And that's why it's really good that you share your solutions today, the conversation spur, and hopefully together we can find the most attractive solution. Thank you very much. Round of applause. Yeah. And now I'm really pleased. So that was LCA efficiency and understanding what's the details in these new buildings. And now we jump to Johanne. Welcome to the stage, who will share with us some really inspiring, I think, initiative in Denmark called Sustain More, and now focusing on the buildings we already have.
Thank you very much. Is it working?
Yes,
it is. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm Johanne Mose Ensbøssel. I'm the head of secretariat at Bevar Mere, which also translates into preserve more or sustain more. Or we can call it whatever we want today. In Danish, it's Bevar Mere. And we work with the future homes in the existing building block. It's a Danish philanthropic initiative, and this is my first presentation of this initiative ever in English, so I hope you will forgive my mistakes in the next 10 minutes. But just to make it very clear, we're only focusing on transformation into future homes. So it's not transformation in general, it's only transformation of the existing building stock into future homes. So Bevar Mere was initiated to address several different potentials. We had some initial analysis made that showed us that we're looking into a population growth in Denmark of around 280,000 people plus by 2040. And that population growth will create a need for around 100,000 to 150,000 new homes. And the initial analysis also, which obviously is a theoretical kind of desk analysis, showed us that there is a potential in the existing building stock that we could actually create from around 40 to 70,000 new homes from the existing building stock. But unfortunately, this transformation is not happening at the pace and at the rate that we would like to see. So 4 philanthropic partners went together to work with this challenge, and these 4 partners are Grundejerne Investeringsfond, Dreyers Fond, Landsbyggefonden, and Realdania. And they all went together to answer this question: how do we create the sustainable homes and housing environments of the future in the buildings that we already have? And the purpose of the initiative is to promote a change in behavior among professionals and the general populations toward transforming and repurposing with a focus on both community, quality of life, climate and resources. So put very briefly, what we want to reduce is carbon footprint, resource consumption and building footprint. But what I find especially nice about this initiative is that we're not only focusing on what we want to reduce and have less of, we're also talking about what are the gains when we actually transform and use the existing building stock. And there's a potential of actually promoting quality of life, community, and climate-friendly behavior. And we want to do it through transformation, repurposing, and densification. So our initial analysis showed us that there are potentials in especially these 4 different typologies. So we're looking into single-family houses, rooftop housing, social housing, and commercial, office, and public service buildings. And we work with different types of activities within this initiative to support further transformation of these 4 different typologies. So what we support are knowledge projects, research projects as such. We support the development of new tools, primarily focusing or targeting the professionals. Then we also support involvement and communication activities, and we support the demonstration projects as inspiring examples. So I will now dive into the knowledge projects and the tools, because this is the activity that we're currently working on. And we have just actually initiated 17 projects. They started this summer. So though I would really very much like to share all the results with you guys today, I can't, because they're not finished yet. They will be in the first half of 2026, most of them. But I'm quite happy to share that there are actually people, representatives from these projects in the room, if you'll just raise your hands. Yeah, so we have Louise Mere, sorry, don't know your name, and Line over here, so sorry, who you can talk to about the progress and the results that are actually happening within the different projects. These 17 projects are 7 tools and 10 knowledge projects. And as a project portfolio, they all support the Bevar Mere purpose. I've tried to translate the titles of the projects. Some of them translate really well, some of them do not. And I can see that the size of the text is a bit small, so please look into that when you get the presentation. So, as I said, we don't have the results yet, but we do have the starting point from all of these projects. And I've tried to kind of draw out some general challenges and potentials that these projects as a portfolio across the whole line address. So across all of these different typologies, what most of our project address are regulatory barriers. This goes across all themes and most projects, and they address them in some way or another with some weight or another. Also, many of our projects address financial barriers, making a business case viable. And thirdly, a lot of our projects address demographic challenges. Also, it becomes a starting point for many projects. And generally, when I was listening to a lot of the other presentation, what also shows in our projects and the starting point of our projects is a need to look at the early phases of projects, of building projects, a need to inform and support decision making in the early phases becomes quite clear that this is really essential. But I'll just dive into a little bit of the 5 themes. So in case of the theme better use of the single family houses, there's a big potential in the existing houses because we have singles or couples actually living in houses that were designed for families. So there's a potential for using these houses better. So a lot of our projects looking into this theme are answering the questions: what are the architectural, structural, social, cultural, regulatory, financial, etc. barriers and potential for sharing square meters and for dividing or partitioning of houses? How might we address these? Then we have establishing rooftop housing. We see there that there's an underutilized potential in the roof space or the attics in the existing building stock. And our projects who are focusing on this theme are generally trying to answer what are the structural, regulatory, and financial barriers and potentials in establishing rooftop housing. Then we have a little bit here, maybe the odd one out, I'm not quite sure, but we have the social housing sector and the future-proofing of this. And they are addressing the challenge of vacancies in the social housing sector. And that's basically because of changes in demographic. But how might we convert traditional social housing to co-housing communities? So actually introducing a whole new way of living within the social sector. And then we have a very broad, wide theme here, which is transformation of commercial, office, and public service buildings into new homes. And these projects are generally looking into the regulatory and process-related barriers and potential for the transformation. And then we have cross-cutting themes, which also then relates back to the financial barriers and potentials, because we have some projects looking into the business case or investment case of transformation in general, and how a business case becomes a barrier and a not very easy starting point for a transformation project. I actually had one of these projects, I was talking to them yesterday, and one of them told me that they had been told from several of their clients that within the first 2 minutes of a site visit, within the first 2 minutes, a client will actually decide whether this is worth transforming or not. So just nice to know you have 2 minutes. 2-minute gap to inform and use a lot of data, inform with LCA and all of the other things to make sure that people make the right decision. So let's try and widen that gap with knowledge and information. We have a wide range of actors taking part of these projects. So obviously there's a whole range of themes, topics, challenges, potentials that we want to shed light on. We need a lot of different types of actors to do that. But also as an initiative, we need all of these actors to actually support the change that Bevare Mere is working to sustain in the future going forward. Speaking of going forward, what is next? We have a call for demonstration projects. So in the next years, we will be gaining a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge from new transformation projects. And we also have campaign activities targeted the wider general population. And then, as I said, most of our knowledge projects and tools will be finished in the first half of 2026. So obviously, it's a Danish initiative. All the information is in Danish, not very helpful, but feel free to reach out, and I hope I will be able to answer all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johanna, for a very good presentation. You can easily do that in English. No challenges at all. So with those inspiring words and a lot of information on what's ongoing, I have to be patient to get the results, but at least just knowing where the results will be is part of the journey, an important journey. So now I would like to welcome on stage Anna Denel from Vasakronan, who will share what you as a big company is doing to utilize existing buildings you have with a good example. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Helle. Vasakronan is the largest real estate owner in Sweden, and we are owned by 4 stately controlled pension funds, the APs. And of course, the sole intent from our owners to invest in Vasakronan is to get a return on their investment. But there is a very important but in that mandate, and that is that the return on the investment that we create at Vasakronan should not come with burden on the environment, people, or society. And therefore, we need to do everything we can to reduce our environmental impact and any negative impact we might have on people or society. And to be able to create this transformation, we set out ambitious targets. And when it comes to climate, we set out a new objective or target a little more than 5 years ago, and that was to become net zero in the whole value chain by 2030. And this is an absolute target. Probably many of you are aware that nowadays science-based targets for buildings is possible to set on an intensity base, but this is absolute for Vasakronan. And quite soon we understood that we have to work on the left side of this slide, the development side of the company, to be able to fulfill this target. The middle part, operation maintenance, we have already reduced by more than 90%. And we started to think about this when doing large development projects. And a little more than 10 years ago, we were notified by our, at that time, largest tenant, SEB, large Swedish bank, that were leasing one large block of the very city center of Stockholm. And they noticed that they were going to move out from these actually 3 buildings and move out to Solna, outer parts of Stockholm. And we understood that this was, of course, challenging, losing our largest tenant, but also tempting, because this is a very centrally located property in Stockholm. So we had potential to develop that site. And we were starting to work on a new zoning plan with the municipality of Stockholm. And we invited 3 prominent architectural Nordic firms, 1 Danish and 2 Swedish architectural firms, to come up with ideas what we could do with this site. And they were all sent a large or extensive program on what we wanted to fulfill. And many of those pages in that program were covering our sustainability objectives. And at least I, in my role as sustainability or head of sustainability, were a little surprised when 2 of those 3 firms came back with the idea that we should tear down the whole block. They were actually selling this with sustainability arguments. They told us, if you tear these old buildings from the 50s down, the new building will be so much more energy efficient. But luckily enough, we found that the third proposal, with keeping as much as possible on this side, was the one that we should choose to go forward with. And we did, and we're able to conserve or save nearly 65,000 square meters at this size. At this site. And we were also able to reuse a lot of construction material. And the facade that you can see here is consisting of granite tiles that we were taking down from the old building and then using on the new renovated building. So that's my first example. The second example is coming from Uppsala, also in Sweden. We were working on a new planning or zoning plan with the municipality of Uppsala, and we're almost finished, and we were only waiting for the plan to come into force to be able to tear this ugly building from 1974 down. But this coming into force process took a little longer than we were anticipating. So we started to rethink, is this actually the best thing to do with this site? And of course, I think any one of you who have been working in the office industry could probably imagine that letting this building, it has been let to the same authority in Sweden for almost 50 years when they moved out. It is a challenge, so something needed to be done. But also in this case, we considered and found out that probably the best thing to do was to keep as much of the original structure and instead add 3 stories on top of it, and also develop a new atrium to be able to get a more modern design of the building. And my last example is from Stockholm, not yet developed. We are in the midst of a process with the municipality of Stockholm, creating a new zoning plan for this area. It's called Alvik, located 5 kilometers outside of the city center, close to Lake Mälaren. It has been an office park or office property environment for quite a long time. I think the first modern office buildings were built in 1980s. And we have been owning this area for a long time. And I actually worked at the company Vasakronan at that time called AP Fastigheter when we when we finished the last building of that transformation. I think it was 2001. And the idea we had, together with the municipality of Stockholm, Stockholm lacks a lot of housing, and the idea was to tear down 65,000 square meters of office building, keeping 3 old buildings, and that's the red buildings on this slide, which were older than from the 80s, and develop new residential buildings. But actually, in this process, we were starting to calculating the embodied carbon of this project, and we invented something that I think all countries of the Nordics and the Baltics should consider to actually disclose in the climate declarations, and that's what we called the backpack. Meaning that if you're involved in any kind of new development, but the only way to realize that project is to first tear down a building, you need to start not at 0, but actually with something, you have like a plus there to start with from the beginning. And that's where I also think we need to reconsider this 50 years in the calculation. Finland and Denmark, listen carefully, because I think we're kind of sending out the signal that it is okay that a building only lives for 50 years. So stop doing that. After a few years, we decided that we cannot simply stand for this any longer, and we took a quite unpopular or made a quite unpopular decision and reached out to the municipality of Stockholm and told them that, hey, we don't think this is a good idea. We want to try to get a new zoning plan, which will allow us to keep as much of the old structure as possible and try to convert some of the older office buildings into residential and maybe keep some of them. Because we thought it was a problem that this was like a single-use area, only office, but we were going to convert it into a single-use area of residentials. So that's what we want to achieve now, and the plan is not already, or it is not ready, but this is what we're working for now. And why is this important? If you allow me, Helle, one more minute. Why is this important? Of course, I told you, to us at Vasakronan, it is important because we need to do this because our owners mandate it from us to reduce our environmental impact. But I also think for office property companies, this is one of the most important things we can do long term to even withstand our own business. So let's do a very quick survey. How many hand ups now? And please raise your hand when, when it feels like this is me. I work at the office 5 weeks a day. 5 days a week. Thanks, Tove. 5 days. Okay. Yes, some of you. I work at the office 4 days a week. 3 days a week. 2 days a week. 1 day. I'm never at the office. I'm always in Copenhagen doing speeches, or some of you, yeah. Okay, so why am I asking you this? Sorry? Space sharing, yes. We see a tremendous change or shift in the office market right now, and not many of us dare to speak about it. But for sure, this is a shift that is permanent. I have 2 examples from Stockholm. Nasdaq will move their current headquarters from a non-Vasakronan building to a Vasakronan building. They are leaving 24,000 square meters, moving into 8,000 square meters. PwC are moving from 14,000 square meters to 8,000 square meters. And I could probably be standing here the whole day, giving you more examples, not only from Stockholm, but from Oslo, Helsinki, and Copenhagen as well, and probably the other larger cities from the Nordics. And we need to find out what to do with all the left office buildings. And I think this is a huge potential to reduce collectively our environmental impact, doing good for society, maybe creating more jobs and also creating more affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for the very specific presentation and with some examples that are rather easy to relate to. And it's interesting for us as regulators, I think, what makes that change? What makes you think, could we do something different? And what are the motivations? And also for your presentation. So now there is a chance for questions. If there's a question in the room, now for the two ladies. Yeah, there's one over here. Mikko, please. And then after that, Louise. And then that's it. Please.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your presentations, Mikko Somertoni from Finland. About the project in Stockholm, I mean the zoning project. I agree with the need to use old office spaces, and we have a lot of that vacancy in Helsinki region. But what about the amount of residents between the two options? Because there's always the possibility to calculate, for example, the CO2 and divide it with the square meters. But what about per person? So how many new residents to the older plan and how many residents to the new version of the plan?
Of course, less, because it will be a mixed area. So there will be probably a school, office buildings, and maybe some kind of light healthcare facilities. Yeah. So of course there will be less residents than with the option to tear down everything. Yeah. But in terms of if you compare only the residential buildings and maybe people per square meter, there will probably be some effect because you always have problems with daylighting if you go for the converting. Yeah. But I find it hard to come to the conclusion that it would be better to.
I'm not saying that it's just about what are the right boundaries to calculate, for example, growing cities. If it's the
but that's another
amount of residents is much less, the question arises that this new build come to a new somewhere else. We have to have for residents somewhere else that don't fit to the area in cities. This is the question.
Yeah, but this plan would probably I don't know.
But that's why it's
on a city level you might be right, but on the other hand, I still think there are so many office buildings and other buildings that you could probably convert.
And I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong.
But it's a good reflection.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to put that question out. How well do we use it? If we change something, will there then be a need in another place? Thank you, Mikko. And then it's Louisa here. You can get. Oh, she's coming. She's fast.
Yeah, thank you very much for good presentations. So I work for, I do one of the projects about sharing or splitting single-family houses for Bevare Mere.
And your name is?
Louisa Hebel, and I'm also from the building halt movement about not building as many new buildings. So about the office buildings and office spaces, so it would be great to be able to if there's a surplus of office buildings. However, we also hear, for instance, from Novo Nordisk here in Denmark, that suddenly they then have you need to be in office all the time, and I hear that from other countries as well. So there's been sort of like a conservative pushback on that, it seems, but it's nice to hear that there's also a change towards downsizing.
How many of you would be willing to go back to the office 5 days a week who are not already there?
Very silent here.
No, it's also a very interesting question. I think a lot of management teams are now trying to work this out. We have a 5 days at the office policy at Vasakronan. Where am I today? Not at the office. So it's not that I'm spending time working from home, but I'm not so much at the office. So, and I think this shift towards hybrid work environment has put the light on the inefficiency of using office space. And many companies are now leaning towards activity-based office-based design and so forth. So I think even if more companies will go back to a policy, 5 days at the office, you will still see a lot of companies leaving square meters.
Thank you very much for the question, Louisa, and for the answers. And I think it was really interesting to get this input from the sector. Of course, it's very difficult to select. There's so many good cases and pioneers out there, so keep it up. So we have good cases in the future as well. But you got something from, what was the first one, Helle? From Norway, from Sweden, from from Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, something like that, at least from the Nordics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.